Hey friends, Rolf here again with the Louisville Proactivist Report. I'm in Lebanon, Kentucky today, and got a great show for you. We're talking unions today, so it's been a busy couple of days. I did two interviews yesterday. Check those out when you get a chance after this video, of course. I did an interview with Karen Little from Alley Cat Advocates, as well as an interview with Ja'Cory Arthur, who is Metro Council District 4, and those are both up on my channel, so check those out later on. But for now, we're going to get into Amazon union building, and I'm going to bring my guest on. There we go. There he is. Welcome to the show, Matt Luttrell. Thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
All right. So, I know you're working on organizing and building unions from scratch here in Kentucky for Amazon. You've gotten heavily involved in that. So, I just want to start at the beginning. Let's take us back to when you worked there and just kind of what were the everyday working conditions that you saw in there for you and your coworkers?
Mm. So I started working at Amazon after I was experiencing burnout from a factory that I worked at from 2018 until the beginning of 2021. And I thought the working conditions at Amazon would be a lot better than that factory because it was a hot factory and made auto parts, constant smell of burning rubber, that kind of stuff. And all the 12-hour shifts I'd have to do, all the 72-hour weeks. It was insane. Um, but when I finally did get burned out, I was looking for somebody that had a limited amount of working hours, um, around the same amount of pay, night shift, all that good stuff. And what better than Amazon, right? They tout themselves as such a progressive employer. They limit you to 60 hours a week or whatever, but they don't tell you when you go there and you become a picker that you're going to be working 20 miles a night. They don't tell you that you're going to have to deal with horrifically overstuffed bins that make it really hard to even find the item you're looking for. They don't tell you you're going to be penalized just every time you're behind production. They don't tell you the hiring and firing system that they have in place, all the metrics you have to constantly juggle around just to stay employed. They don't tell you that if you start off as a temporary worker, you're going to have to work twice as hard as the full time employees just to get that opportunity to convert to a full time employee. So it didn't take long to realize that the working conditions were pretty horrible and that Amazon was screwing people over. One of the first things I saw when I got there was a class action lawsuit against Integrity Staffing. That is that is their staffing agency that they used at the time, and they were being sued for wage theft, among other things. Just like the delivery service partner drivers were. Driving companies were being sued for wage theft as well. Amazon was being sued for theft of tips. And then so I realized I connected the dots. The last employer that I was with, they were getting sued because they were price fixing. And now this company was exactly the same, but screwing over the employees more than the customer. It's all about the customer at Amazon, and that's why soon after, I tried to cope with it. They're not so bad, not as bad as the other employer, all that stuff. But I realized something had to be done, so eventually I joined the Gemba team, which is a lean manufacturing production term for people that go out and they talk to workers on the shop floor, asking them questions to survey them about working conditions, how things could be improved to make their job easier. You report that stuff to management, do a big presentation about it once a week in front of all the managers, and they pretend to listen.
So Gimba is something that actually Amazon puts out. It's not a third party or anything.
Yeah, it's Amazon. So it's a volunteer thing. You're going to be an employee, you do your job, and then an hour a night, you're going to go and talk to some employees, write some stuff down on a clipboard, tell your manager will make an action plan where they're supposed to get it done within a certain amount of time, yada, yada, yada. But really, they just pretend to care. They're very apathetic to our issues. And so it didn't take long to realize they did not care about the working conditions at all. They didn't care about the sweltering heat. They didn't care about the wear and tear on people's bodies. And the only thing they really did try to improve was your efficiency at the job. And I saw what was going down in Alabama. I saw what was going down in New York with the unionization. I was inspired. I was inspired by the wave of organizing that was happening all across the country. And I decided I would learn what the heck is going on. I would learn how to organize and take things into our own hands when management clearly is not going to do anything to help us out.
Real quick, I want to ask you something I hear a lot about in national media as far as working conditions at Amazon. Like, what is the bathroom situation there? I hear a lot of complaints about that. It's too far away. People have to use bottles sometimes. You get penalized if you take too long. So what's the actual story behind that? Is there any truth in any of that?
Oh, yes, the Amazon piss jugs. I even seen some of those in my facility. Why? Because, when the bathroom is really far away and you don't know when they're being cleaned, if they're being cleaned, you're going to have to go and use a different bathroom. They're not going to stop their cleaning just because you don't. So you're going to have to walk, a quarter of a mile to the next bathroom in the next building, something like that. Um, you know, Go down from the fourth floor to do that. You even have pregnant employees working there that can't really do that. Amazon's not going to make an accommodation for them just because they're pregnant. And when people try to hold it in that long all the time because they're afraid that if they use the bathroom, they're going to get time off task and it won't be excused, they're afraid that their productivity is going to drop if they use the bathroom. They're afraid of all these different factors and not making it to continuing their employment at Amazon. That yeah, they'll get desperate enough to pee in a bottle, or if they don't pee in a bottle, then they will just develop a urinary tract infection or an actual severe bladder issue where they literally just can't hold it anymore. Hmm. And what are they going to do? Go through workers' comp for a bladder issue? It doesn't sound like something workers' comp is going to accommodate.
Probably not.
And if Amazon says they're lying about a workplace injury on their workers' compensation, what happens? They usually get fired for that, right? And why Amazon does the things it does when they decide to put the bathrooms that far away. Well, Amazon has a purpose for that. Planned attrition. They want you to burn out so that you're not there for too long, so that you don't have a chance to get comfortable at the company. Because Jeff Bezos has said many times that he believes his own personal philosophy is when people get comfortable, they make you less profit, less money. So they intentionally have to have a 150% burnout rate, turnover rate, by what they will call it. And that's what it officially is. So as far as the bathrooms go, the drivers have it a lot worse. Urinating in bottles every day. They can't deviate from their route. But the warehouse employees have it pretty bad too, and that's universal. There's even there's a 5-story Amazon building in Houston, Texas, and I wonder how far they're back.
Like an elevator ride, probably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when we talk about a facility like JFK8 that was built in 2017, we talk about a facility like the one in Houston, That wasn't built too long ago either. They are robotics facilities. They have all of that automation. If you're a picker, the robot brings the items to you, and you just walk up a couple stairs on the ladder to pick it. But Amazon SDF1, it was built in 1999. It was one of the first fulfillment centers. They saw that these people in Campbellsville were desperate. They saw that these people had just lost their major employer, which was Fruit of the Loom. It had been here for generations. And they decided, because of NAFTA, that they would leave and go to Honduras, outsource their production, because it's a lot cheaper than paying people as much as they did, where people in the Campbellsville area and the central Kentucky area had a middle class lifestyle that they afforded just by working at a textile, having a lot of their family members work at a textile. And Amazon saw this. They were paying minimum wage back in the day. They were looking for the cheapest places to go where they wouldn't have to pay taxes, where they would have a special program where they wouldn't even really have to pay for the land to build their warehouse. And so they chose Campbellsville, Kentucky as one of their first fulfillment center locations.
Now, now, real quick, when I remember the Fruit of the Loom situation, so that basically created a gap in employment availability here, right? So what were people doing in between? Just driving far, or just little local shops, or farming, or what?
People had to find whatever jobs they could. If they could fall back on farming, yeah, but it's not that likely that somebody who doesn't own any land is going to be able to do that. A lot of people started working at a telemarketing agency that is in Campbellsville. Okay. A lot of people had to live off of a special unemployment program that Kentucky created for Campbellsville, similar to the unemployment programs in Appalachia, which pretty much assumes that you're not going to get a job again because it was such a hopeless situation.
Wow. Okay.
Foreclosures skyrocketed. People were just going broke. They couldn't pay their mortgage. They were losing their homes. And Amazon saw this desperate situation. Jeff Bezos saw this. And, well, he was a hedge fund guy around then. That's the kind of person he was. He knew how to maximize his efficiency, for his own personal profit. And he came here. These people have been here. You have very tenured employees who have been here since the doors opened. Even some of the people in management, however, they've been neglected. They built Amazon with their blood, sweat, and tears over more than a decade of work. Right? Amazon used that money to go and expand. However, Amazon didn't repay the favor. They didn't build up these employees' lives. They didn't even give them upward mobility. They'll still be a tier one, making the maximum top out pay of 2018. That's less than $21 an hour. After 20 years of work. 20 years of loyalty to the same company.
And they're never going to go above that after 20 years.
No.
Wow. Okay, so there's a gap in employment availability. Amazon swoops in. They bring this massive facility. They hire a lot of people. How many people working there?
So the numbers obviously fluctuate based on the time of year and the hiring. So, when I worked there was about 1,200 people.
1,200 people.
800 of them, give or take, would have been eligible for the bargaining unit for the organizing.
Okay, so you're looking at these working conditions now. You see this pretty much all there is in the area. You yourself even, drive 30 minutes or so to get there. Mm-hmm. So you're looking at this, you're seeing what's happening in Bessemer, Alabama, in New York. So what you're looking at unionizing, what do you think the benefit is to unions? Why do you think that a union situation could help this warehouse?
So a union could hold Amazon's management accountable for when workers get injured, for when workers get heat stroke, when workers are being underpaid. You can hold them accountable and you can bargain with them. And then you have representation. You have your shop steward, you have your business agent that is going to represent you. Whenever you have any grievance with management, you will have access to the wine garden rights where you can talk with your steward in any management interaction whatsoever. And you have so many protections. And Amazon employees, they started organizing without unions long before the Amazon labor union. They started Amazonians United, based out of Chicago, Seattle, New York, the sort of bigger city locations. And they would often make their petitions. They would have protests, walkouts, and they won things. They won things like water coolers that are closer to people. They want things like sick time, at least in Illinois. Um, they had a lot of victories, but they didn't have any legal protection. They had their National Labor Relations Act rights where they could do all this stuff without a union, but they couldn't protect themselves. And eventually, Amazon grew wise, and they started shutting down those locations, forcing those employees to move on to a different location, and then spreading that organization, Amazonians United, very thinly, where they couldn't really effectively organize it.
Mm.
And
Union
so,
busting, basically.
yeah. Well, although it's not a union, it's a wildcat.
It's still the same techniques, though.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, you need somebody to bring Amazon to the bargaining table, and you have to be very militant about that to get your way. You have to be willing to do what the Amazon employees did for Black Friday. They went on strike in more than 30 countries. In the United States, it happened in Illinois. Our boy from Illinois, Drew Dazinskas, he led a strike over there at MDW2 and MDW4. And now you have a lot of concerned organizations, sort of socialist organizations that are helping out Amazon employees to organize, like the DSA, like the Bernie Sanders campaigners, Our Revolution, the Progressive International overseas, all the Amazon unions in Europe, even unionized dock workers in Turkey, India, went on strike. So now you have all of this cooperation and you have a lot of leverage that is now in the Amazon employees' hands. You have in Northern Kentucky, they were inspired with what we did down here, and they're organizing the Air Hub in Hebron, Kentucky, Amazon's first air hub. Nearly $2 billion facility, and that's not accounting for everything they spent on their planes, on their cargo planes, that they could better compete with DHL and FedEx, where they can bring in all that overseas air freight. So their prime air fleet is what they call it. And now Amazon employees are starting to get a logistical stranglehold on organizing the company. They're not going to have anywhere to run soon.
Okay, so you're looking around, you're getting inspired and kind of deciding, you want to build a union there where you're working at. So your story is really just kind of starting to begin there. So take it from there.
So yeah, I started reaching out to different organizations. I was quite a bit of an anarchist, so one of the logical destinations for me was to go and get mentorship from the IWW. And I became a mentor. I became mentored by members and organizers from that union. What they used to call themselves back in the day, the one big union, which is what they were supposed to be. And they still organize to this day. Anybody can be a member. Anybody can get access to their training and resources, historical documents, learn from all of those experiences. So once I did that, I started developing a strategy together and developing knowledge, which helped me develop more confidence. Confidence to actually go out on the shop floor and start talking to my workers, my fellow workers. And once I started doing that, you get people that are like, yeah, we deserve better. Yeah, we deserve more. And it didn't really matter what side of the political spectrum they were on because they knew that they had to organize as a class. It's very apparent your class at Amazon because they have the tier system. The tier ones, the beginner associates. They have tier two, which is like some minor apprenticeships, maintenance, stuff like that, where they're in training in college, where Amazon will send people to school sometimes. They want their piece of skin back though. And then you have your tier threes, your tier ones that get promoted to a process assistant, kind of a minor supervisory role. They just do the manager's job for them, while the managers play on their laptop and look for who to fire. And then, of course, you have the salaried employees, the tier four and above. So you know exactly what class you're in when you're in Amazon.
Mm. So after that, at what point does Amazon notice what you're doing, and how did they react to it?
Well, I started pressing unfair labor practices after Amazon started noticing what I was doing. First, I believe it was on social media. Yeah, so I would post a few pro-union things every once in a while in a Facebook group that had the Amazon workers in it. Very bold, right? But it was pretty subtle. Just posting an article here and there. And yeah, like they gave some people with aspirations to become managers probably something to do. So eventually, the whisper campaigns start. Right, we're building up this organizing committee, and all the people that are close to management, management can give them anything to say, spread rumors about us, tell employees they're going to get fired if they go through with this, tell employees they're going to get fired if management finds out who they are. And of course, that takes some hits. That definitely takes some hits in the confidence that employees have in the movement, especially when you're trying to be an independent union. When you're tried and untested. They may have had a victory at JFK8, but people will always talk about how it's a brand new union. They haven't got Amazon to the bargaining table yet, right? It will say, oh well, retail wholesale union in Alabama is really corrupt or something like that. It's all a confidence game for them. They want to destroy your credibility. They came after my personal credibility. They would come after you for everything under the sun if you could give them any type of ammunition. But I'd say the retaliation started the hardest the end of April. The end of April, shortly after Amazon Labor Union won in Staten Island, New York, at the JFK facility. Amazon, they started instructing their security guards to take a walk on the floor where the employees work every hour. They would have to go to a different floor, spend at least an hour there, check the bathrooms for union materials every 45 minutes, and investigate it if they do find it. Like checking the cameras for who's been in there, who walked in there with some papers, right? And got really got a lot of really pathetic attempts from Amazon after that. You know, they they try to make themselves look inclusive with their little um, diversity, equity, and inclusion clubs. They have clubs for disabled workers, clubs for LGBTQ workers, and all that stuff. It's very performative. They they want to say, oh, you can be yourself at Amazon. Well, why won't you let people organize so they can be themselves?
Right.
You can be in your little affinity groups, but you're still controlled by management. They like to sit in on those affinity groups. They like to spy on you with their cameras everywhere in the facility. Surprised they don't have facial recognition. That's something we're trying to investigate.
Now, is it true each employee has a device that they use in there, and do they use that to kind of track how long it takes you to do basically everything?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they have a scanner. And once you sign into that scanner to pick, that's of course the mobile scanner. You would pick, stow, or go looking for various items that a manager assigns you to do on those. And your every move is tracked. As soon as you logged in there, the manager gets like a little ping on their computer where they can see your precise location. And then every time it'll tell them things like how long you've been without scanning an item, how long between scanning an item, what your rate is, which there's an average rate, and then there's rate that is based on every single process path. Every single amount of items that are in your gun, there's always a certain amount of items, and your process paths are always changing. When it changes, that takes the form of your gun will then be empty. You will have to log into a new tote, and then you will have to start finding items again, right? So it'll be either a customer order, which is slower. It has a rate of like 70 to 90 units per hour, which varies. And then you'll have the trans shipments, which goes from one facility to another. And those have a higher rate. You have to pick a lot faster. So your rate is always changing all night long when you're picking. You have to go various distances to get where you need to go. You can be moved at any time depending on what the algorithm says and what the process assistant does on their computer, where they can move you anytime they like, based on the metrics that they have to meet. And yeah, your every move is tracked.
All right, so now they're tracking you, and then they're starting to come down harder on you. So how does that play out?
So you definitely notice that management starts watching you a lot more. You notice that they stop being so friendly with you. They liked me because I volunteered to do safety committee and GEMBA around that place. So they would always be having me do all kinds of various activities around the facility, fixing various things around the mods, like putting pick carts back into place, replacing tape that was damaged somewhere, making sure everything met the regulations and the standards that it's supposed to, and policing around the facility to make sure that some obvious hazards could be addressed and fixed, stuff that employees were complaining about that were a danger to them. Whenever management would actually care, because they only care when it's like a major liability. You understand? And yeah, management would just stop asking me to do anything around the facility. They wouldn't want me to do that. They wouldn't talk to me. They would get nervous around me, which is kind of funny. They try to make you nervous around them because they're actually really nervous around you. And they don't want to feel that way. They want to feel like they have some kind of power in the situation, right? They go from being friendly to you to trying to manipulate you into hating your job and your life and try to get you to give up on what you're doing. They never will outright say it. Amazon's retaliation is very subtle. They will do what they can to get you fired or to make you burn out and quit your job. Eventually, you feel like they start manipulating your numbers, holding you to a higher standard than other employees. I started noticing that I was getting targeted with write-ups when I had been there for more than a year, pretty much worked at the same pace all the time. I did not let my organizing interfere with my workload and with my productivity. And however, Amazon would find something to write me up with, and it would never make sense how they would get me for production or time off tasks. When I was very vigilant about checking my numbers, checking my rate, making sure I was on point, and working faster, trying to alter my behavior after I do get written up, because you know, obviously you don't have many jobs in this area. You don't want to get fired even if you are organizing.
And so that's what ended up happening, right?
Yeah, they started just trying to write me up all the time. Started giving me the cold shoulder, trying to make me hate the job, getting people to spread rumors all of the time. That would make people lose confidence in the organizing committee. That would make people reluctant to sign one of our authorization cards that go to the NLRB so that you can have an election, and make people doubt the very union that you have, making people, excuse me, making people hate people like Chris Smalls or hate the election that was going on. They make people completely unaware of their labor rights, spreading that union buster propaganda without actually flying in the consultants, just showing them the same information, like falsified court cases that never happened, falsified firings that never happened, saying that, oh, a long time ago these workers at an these unionized workers at a newsroom, a news guild, they got fired, and it was just because of the union, and this company got away with it, right? There were no consequences for this company, and saying Amazon will do the same thing because it's an outdated facility, because they're not as important to the logistical network, because they're too good. They spoil us. They'll do that. You've heard of gratitude gaslighting?
Yeah.
It's a psychological technique where even if you weren't there to witness a slight change and improvement in working conditions, they'll try to make you feel like you should be grateful for that. You should be grateful that you're not working um, at the warehouse in 1999 where they had absolutely no fans, where they had not so much safety standards, where people were leaving due to heat stroke every day. And that's documented. There's articles about this facility from back.
Did you all have actual air conditioning, or was that one of the facilities where they would park the ambulances outside? Because I know Amazon had a few facilities where they refused to pay air conditioning and just kept an ambulance sitting outside to take whoever had a heat stroke to the hospital. Was that you all?
No, it was not ours. Which I'm really glad it wasn't ours. Because that's not something to joke around about employees getting hurt all the time.
Right.
Most employees here would have musculoskeletal injuries, sprains, strains, all that type of stuff. There's people who have developed carpal tunnel. There's older people. In rural areas, you have a lot of older people that have to take jobs that they can get. They didn't go to college. They never had the opportunity. They never had very many opportunities in life to begin with. And they find themselves the best job they can get is at this Amazon facility. So you have these older people working in there. They'll pull their hip out of place, trying to open up a bin that is massively overstuffed. Like, imagine you have a dresser, it's made out of cardboard, and you stuff like 30 pairs of jeans in it, 50 pairs of jeans in it, something like that. Then you try to open it, then you try to forcefully open it, yank it open, right? But you can't do that. You can't do that because it's so stuffed. You have to apply so much force and pressure that you're just wearing out your joints, your limbs, causing that carpal tunnel syndrome.
Or that arthritis too, more likely.
Arthritis. Yes, so many people work there as arthritis. And you notice all of these things cannot be easily proven because they are so common. They can't be easily proven to be caused by your work. Mm-hmm. So many people have arthritis. If you're an older person, you've done factory work all your life, well, they're going to say that one of your other workplaces caused it on the workers' compensation form. You go to the AmCare facilities. They're supposed to be on-site staff that have medical training, right? But all they really know how to do is hand you an ice pack or give out a cheap knee brace, or they couldn't even stop a bloody nose if they wanted to.
Mm.
They won't. They'll just let you sit there, hold your nose up like this until it stops bleeding. Um, in the facility, you know, they don't do anything for you. Um, it's a common meme. It's a common meme around Amazon workers that if you get seriously injured, AmCare will just give you an ice pack, tell you to sit around for a few minutes, ice your wounds, and then go back to work. You could you can get seriously injured. You can get a concussion around that place, and they'll give you an ice pack.
That'll fix it.
Yeah. Be grateful that you get to keep the ice pack.
It's a wonderful perk there.
Yeah. Might hand you some ibuprofen or something.
Yeah. Okay, so how did it all culminate with you working there?
With me working there, as a young man, it wasn't really so detrimental as my health as it would be on an older person. However, yeah, you can only keep that up for so long, walking 20 miles or more a night. I obviously walked more because I volunteered for these other activities. Um, and so, of course, it was painful for me. It started to do some wear and tear on my body. I had previously done 3 years of work in a factory where I was on my feet all the time, where I was in the heat all the time, manufacturing rubber parts and stuff like that. It's no joke. And so, you would have times like during peak season where they work you 11 hours a day,
Mm.
right? Where they force you to meet higher quotas, all that stuff. My peak season in 2021, it was rough. It was no joke. You were working these 60-hour weeks. But the difference between 2021 and now, this peak season they have going on now, you're working 60 hours a week every week, and you're not getting paid anything extra. There's no incentive for working these extra hours. Last year in 2021, they would hire people from October until mid-January. They would hire people and give them a $3,000 sign-on bonus. They would get $1,000 a month. They had to make it there for 3 months. A lot of people ended up disqualified for those sign-on bonuses because Amazon would delay their start date, things like that. And the employees that were just working there, they had been working there, they paid them an extra $3 an hour if they worked night shift. And that was your incentive for working peak. They would also give you double time for the overtime, which wasn't nearly enough for what you were giving away to them, what you were sacrificing from your health, what you were risking from the injuries.
The pay didn't match the value of your labor.
No, and it sure doesn't now. In the year 2022, with all of the inflation that we have experienced, all of the people started begging since February. Since February, whenever the inflation really started, you saw it with gas prices 1st, but then you saw people that they couldn't even fill up their tank to get to work. Because a gallon of gas was a quarter of your wage, right? And when people just couldn't get around, you had people just getting fired because they would go negative on their hours. Negative on your hours means that whatever hours you have owed, you have used too many, and now it's like you owe Amazon hours. So it'll actually show up as minus however many hours you missed of work. Minus 10, minus 20.
Basically, paycheck deductions.
Yes. Yeah, paycheck deductions all the time. And, well, typically, whenever you would go negative, if they didn't like you, they could just fire you because you're negative, right? And that's what happens to so many people. That's how they get terminated. If they don't like you, they will terminate you as soon as your number goes negative. Or for the temporary workers, it was as soon as you got too many points. They gave you like 6 points that you would get. And they don't have the point system anymore. That's one of the minor changes they made. So now, temporary workers, they do get hours accumulated over just points. Um, but back during the coronavirus, they would, of course, you would have to wear masks and stuff like that. But when you're in a hot warehouse working with a mask on, that that is detrimental. They wouldn't even try to cool it down any. They wouldn't try to make the HVAC work better. They wouldn't try to make the fans work better. They wouldn't put them in any more places. You had places that were missing fans entirely, where you would be in a mod, suffocating in the heat with no airflow going around, having to wear a mask, having to get sweat all over your face. You know, you weren't safe. Amazon didn't care if you got COVID. Eventually, they did away with all of the COVID precautions. Eventually, they stopped giving you COVID leaves. First, it manifested if you weren't vaccinated and you got COVID, they would allow you a couple of days off to get tested, but you wouldn't get paid. Whereas before, they would give you paid time off for when and until you got better from COVID, which is something they had to do in the first year and a half of the pandemic.
Okay, so all right, so just fast forwarding a little bit. So you're not with Amazon anymore now, right?
No, they fired me August 19th of this year.
This year.
Mm-hmm.
So why do you think that is? I know you have a different opinion about why that firing took place than what they're stating. So what do you think happened, and what are they saying happened?
Oh, they try to say it was because of a lack of production. They tried to write me up, and they wrote me up so many times. I tried to fight it every time. However, they don't always give you that means. You go back and forth with management, and they start getting more hostile with you. You question how the numbers are not legitimate, how you're behind on productivity, how you got too much time off task, and they don't want to explain it to you. They don't. They were supposed to retrain me, and they never did. Which, like, if you get so many write-ups, they're supposed to go and retrain you. Usually, you just sit in a room with a learning ambassador, and they tell you that your rate is not good enough. And here's some tips to make it higher.
It's a 3-minute video or something like that.
Yeah,
yeah.
Just sit there and talk to them for a little bit and watch a video. So I allege that they fired me because of their union busting practices. They manipulated the numbers, got me into a position where they could try and make it seem justified. If I was in a double bind situation, which says damned if you do, damned if you don't. Because they eventually had me at 5 out of 6 write-ups. You're allowed to get 6 write-ups within a year.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're allowed to get 5 write-ups in a year. If you get the 6th one, then you are automatically fired. And so they didn't fire me based on that. They just gave me that last production write-up, which got me. And I didn't have any means to contest it. When you have productivity write-ups, management doesn't allow for any excuses unless you have an accommodation. Amazon is notorious for not upholding those accommodations that are supposed to be protected by various legal acts like the Americans with Disabilities Act, the FMLA standards. Amazon has even fired people before they had a chance to see a doctor about their issue. Couldn't take time.
It's pretty low. Damn.
Amazon has fired all kinds of employees just for organizing. Just for saying the word union, you got a target on your back. Even if you don't say the word union, you just want to go back and forth with management and try to get them to do something good. You that they ruin your relationship with them, and they decide to come after you. You become a problem for management and HR, and they decide they want to get rid of you. And that was me. Even before I was advocating for a union openly, I was um, I was advocating that they improve working conditions, staying on them about it. They knew who I was, and they knew that I was always going to be there on behalf of my fellow workers, no matter what they wanted to do. If they wanted to do a militant type of organizing like Amazonians United, or if they wanted a full-time union effort.
All right. So now that you're not with the company, that's not the end of it for you, though. You're still working on it. Still organizing with other unions, with other warehouses. So, kind of what's the status with all that work?
So since I got fired, the union organizing at warehouses all around the country have blown up and exacerbated. Just all these different warehouses that have started organizing since then. It's incredible. You have organizing committees just popping up all over the place in Kentucky. They look for mentors, and that's been a large part of what I've been doing in my time that I've been unemployed. Is I've been mentoring all of these different Amazon employees, trying to keep everything together on the inside of the STF1 warehouse. However, so many employees were scared by the fact that I was fired, and that really destroyed a lot of our confidence. So the organizing committee at our facility voted to suspend the campaign until further notice back in October. However, all of these different employees have reached out to me, mentoring them on helping them get started. And you even had campaigns that have been inspired, connecting people to their local resources. And an example of the type of organizing we have to do at Amazon is with these exhausted workers. You can't just hand them a flyer. You can't just stand outside their warehouse and hand them a flyer. That doesn't fly. That doesn't fly. It never really did work for union organizing. You have to provide some sort of mutual aid for these people. You have to feed the workers. You have to give them refreshments. You have to actually make and build a great relationship of trust, compassion, relatability. You have to organize around all of their common demands rather than some kind of copy paste thing that one of these big unions achieves at a different workplace or somewhere else. Every workplace is unique. Even every Amazon fulfillment center is unique in its own way, and they all have their different needs. You see in Carolina, in the Raleigh-Durham area, where they have the Amazonians United for Solidarity and Empowerment, they are organizing a campaign that is way more militant and more independent than anything else I've seen going on at Amazon in the last year.
And so, what do you think the way is forward now locally? Is this are you going to partner up with a union, start your own union? What do you think the best path forward is?
The best path forward is that I continue to fight Amazon on my unfair labor practices. I continue to do these charges and take them to the trial by hearing, and I'm betting on getting reinstated and paid what they would have owed me if they hadn't wrongfully terminated me. And if I do get reinstated at this facility, then I would hope that we can get things moving at SDF1 again. I would hope that we can do that there, or the other option would be to transfer to another Amazon facility that is organizing, or to get involved in other different types of organizing too, like tenants organizing, mutual aid organizing that isn't particularly labor oriented, but also oriented towards just providing to the people that are in need. So I hope to get involved in all of this. But
And how long is it? Have they given you a timeline yet on when they're going to make a decision?
So they're supposed to be doing something after New Year's. My agent that was assigned to me recently wrapped up every conceivable part of the affidavit process of the investigation. It took them so long. We actually met like 4 or 5 times at this library just to get things hashed out. You have to review your evidence. You have to get an affidavit for this charge, affidavit for that charge, every charge that exists. Of course, affidavit for my firing. And then you have to go and review and dispute the evidence that the employer brings up against you. So it has been a very long process. The regional director of Region 9 of the Labor Board, which is in Cincinnati and covers this region, that regional director kept asking for so much more information. That's one reason that it takes forever. Speaking to people that are also wrapped up in unfair labor practices, trying to get an injunction through where the employer would have to reinstate you and give you back pay. That it's a similar process for them. And the labor board isn't exactly our biggest ally. They're not exactly there to help us as much as they are there to have the appearance of being neutral, even though there's a lot of times where they openly side with the company, like we saw in Alabama, where the Warrior Met coal mine workers have been on strike. The company sued them for money, damages. I believe it was originally $3 million that they tried to sue them for in losses, and the labor board still made the union pay out over $100,000 to the company just because a strike generates some losses in revenue, right? You saw, of course, a Congress that gets involved in labor disputes on the railroads and doesn't give them anything, doesn't let them bargain with the company themselves. Will make it illegal for them to go on strike. We saw this happen. We saw organizations like the DSA and all of the people who say all of the right things to try and get the workers on their side. They all betrayed us, all of them. And so, and with the NLRB being under budget for so many years, like my agent was bringing an outdated laptop and printer over here trying to wrap up this investigation. It takes a toll on what their capabilities would actually be if they did exist to serve the workers and the organizers. The very fact that employers can file unfair labor practices against the union is insane.
Yeah, definitely. So, in your opinion, so right now Amazon has one or is it two warehouses that are unionized?
It is only one at this moment. There have been several warehouses that have filed for election since then. There was a warehouse that is an air hub in San Bernardino that filed. There was a warehouse in New Jersey that filed. However, Amazon tries to dispute your bargaining unit. So they try to use the NLRB against you. And so they will often pretty much force these employees to withdraw their petitions for an election. Um, but there's organizing going all over. Like I said, we do have that logistical stranglehold starting to develop.
So
Two air hubs that are organizing. That is major.
what do you think the prospects are for organizing a whole lot of these Amazon warehouses, air hubs? Is that something you think that's on the horizon? Or what's your opinion?
Um, I'm pretty plugged into a lot of these campaigns, and most of these organizers are great. The ones in Northern Kentucky, I know them. They helped me out with my campaign down here. Um, they're great organizers. The person that is leading their organizing committee, Griffin Ritz, they're very professional. I think that their campaign it will it will succeed. Amazon's a lot more aggressive with them too. The more aggressive the company is, the more important the campaign is. So when Amazon called the union busters and the consultants to go over there and spread misinformation about their union efforts, they're afraid if they want to pay people thousands of dollars a day just to lie to your face as an employee, call you into a captive audience meeting. Um, I think the prospects are great, and there were a couple of things that did fail. The one in Bessemer, Alabama, that second election was unsuccessful. There was the election at the Albany Fulfillment Center that was unsuccessful, even though they had great organizers. The Amazon Labor Union, didn't really have the resources, the capacity, and um, had a lot of issues within it that kept it from winning that election. And now you have different unions starting to get involved and pick up the pieces, like the Teamsters, that have a whole department that is dedicated to organizing Amazon fulfillment centers. They are training their organizers and getting Amazon employees involved with how to go into these workplaces and form unions there. You have all of these socialist groups that are for the people getting involved at these warehouses.
All right. So last question I have for you is, for anybody watching that's working somewhere that's not unionized, what advice would you give to them on how to get started in their place of work?
Oh, I need a sip of water for that question. Broken bottle. So, if you're going to start organizing, you're going to want to develop your reasons why you want to organize. That's always very important. You want to organize for better working conditions. You want to organize for better wages. Probably all of those things. Legal representation, representation on the shop floor, and you want to start learning. Like I was whenever I first got interested and inspired in the process, I didn't know jack shit about it, right? So I had to go somewhere and seek mentorship. And I was mentored for months before I even started talking to my coworkers on the shop floor. And I took that time to learn labor history, learn practical techniques, read books like Fight Like Hell. Great book. Read Confessions of a Union Buster. You want to be plugged into all of this before you start. And whenever you do start organizing, you don't want to make it obvious. You want to be subtle. You don't want to start saying the word union on the shop floor as soon as you start talking to your coworkers. You're quite frankly just going to spook a lot of people. You have to be friends with a lot of your coworkers before you even start. You have to be willing to take it on the chin whenever somebody disagrees with you, whenever somebody is anti-union and they can't really be convinced otherwise. You have to learn to accept that. And you have to learn that you're going to have to advocate for the interests of every worker, no matter if they want a union or if they don't want a union. And that is key. You're going to have to learn how to be relatable to people, learn how to help them. If people don't see you as somebody that's trustworthy, if you're not charismatic and easy to get along with, they're not going to have much to do with you. Like back this way? Yeah. Sorry, I got distracted for a minute. You're going to need to be connected to your local resources more than you're going to want to be connected to resources that are far away from you. That is a hard lesson that I learned is you don't really want to take advice from people in New York or people on the West Coast when you're in Kentucky. You want to find your local organizers, your local union, your local DSA chapter. Try to talk with your Starbucks employees that you know. Anybody that you know who is currently a shop steward, who is currently organizing, enlist their help. Most of the time, they will help you. You want to get into the same social spaces as your coworkers. That's important, that you're able to actually get along with them.
Absolutely, that's great advice. I think we're living in a time now where unions are growing big again. I remember a time when I was growing up, my grandfather was in the union and raised a very large, I won't get into details, but raised a very large family, did very well in a one-income household, set his children up for success, set my grandmother up for success in a way that jobs aren't doing nowadays. We've seen the erosion of workers' rights for decades now, but unions are finally catching on again. They've gotten more popular than they have been in many years. They're the one institution in America that people aren't losing faith in unions. So faith in unions is maintaining while faith in all these other institutions is declining. So I think this is a big opportunity. We're seeing it with Starbucks, for example. They've had a massive boom. I think that's what Amazon is trying to fight against is a Starbucks situation of just catching fire and unionizing warehouse after warehouse the way Starbucks is. I think they're at like over 300 Starbucks unionized now. It's amazing. And that's in like a year and a half. So
massive. Incredible. Almost 300 stores unionized now. And the Starbucks workers, they operate on independent unionism, right? They might get involved with the DSA to some extent, something like that. But Starbucks Workers United, they have philosophy of like each one teach one. So whenever they unionize one store, they're going to send workers to another store, transfer to that store, get something popping off there, expand as broad of an umbrella as possible that encapsulates. But one of the things you see with the resurgence of unions is that people know that unions benefit them materially. It improves their life to such a great extent, right? And since the pandemic, you've had a lot of suffering, just like during the Great Depression when unions started popping off. In the times when unions popped off, the workers were suffering. Your relationship to what you're going to do as an organizer is directly related to the amount of comfort that is in your life. If you are a comfortable worker, you're probably not going to organize. If you are a worker that is chomping at the bit just to live, you're most likely going to organize. That's what we've seen in the Starbucks workers. They are underpaid worse than the Amazon workers. And that really did set off. A lot of these people are trying to work this barista gig, go to school, and pay their student loans all at the same time with no relief from the institutions that we are losing trust in, the corporations, the government, right? And that was such a reason that so many of my coworkers wanted to organize is because they weren't comfortable. They knew the risk that they were putting themselves in and day out, and they knew that they would have to do something to eliminate that. Most people have older parents, that older grandparents too, that were part of unions back in the day, and they got inoculated with that working class lifestyle, that working class mentality. Class consciousness is ingrained in way more people than one side of the political spectrum or another.
That's it. So tell people how they can follow you. Also, there's a link I have in the description. It's a mutual aid link. Talk about that as well.
Um, so after before I became unemployed, we had the SDF1 organizing committee. We had a fundraiser set up for that. Then eventually I had to set up a survival fund for myself because I knew that I would have difficulty getting unemployment. The employer does everything they can to stop you from getting unemployment. And they delayed and delayed and delayed me getting unemployment. I became reliant on my survival fund to get the bills paid. And thanks to a lot of people that contributed mutual aid to me, um, I decided that I needed to pay it forward. I started meeting all of these people online who had a fundraiser for themselves, a GoFundMe, and they really needed help. A lot of homeless people even. And so I knew that I had my links to my stuff, but then I'm like, how do I get visibility for all of these other causes? And so I created a Linktree account and I started linking to all of these different funds, um, all of these different things about myself, about these other unions that people would really want to know. So, I have that Linktree link, Unionize Amazon KY. And that's where you can find everything. You can find various mutual aid networks. You can donate to organizations like Railroad Workers United. You can donate to organizers that currently cannot work their job because they have cancer. There's a guy named Nate. He's a very dear friend of mine. He works with the Emergency Workplace Organizing Committee, a resource I have used myself to learn and attended so many of their Zoom calls, so many of their webinars. And he started going through chemotherapy for his cancer. And, of course, he wasn't a paid organizer, he was a volunteer. So when he couldn't work his construction job anymore, he became dependent on his GoFundMe. That's one of the people that is linked to my Linktree. You can donate to the Strike Pantry. That's the workers in Alabama that are on strike. The Union Met, the Warrior Met coal mine workers are reliant on their strike pantry where they feed the people all the time. There's a lot of resources on there. If you follow my social media, I try to spread awareness to all of these different movements as possible. I even make some TikTok videos every now and then that you can see. It's all there.
All right, man. I appreciate you taking so much time to come on today. Been through a lot with this situation. I hope your personal situation clears up as soon as possible and you're able to get the income going again. I also appreciate the work that you're doing locally and statewide and just contributing everywhere with unions going on. and even taking that extra step with some mutual aid, which is really important in society nowadays and often overlooked. So that's a big deal. Appreciate the fight, man. You're doing a great job. So yeah. Once again, thanks for coming on and talking to everybody about what's going through. For all you viewers, make sure that you take a look at that mutual aid link, and that if you can contribute, definitely do that. It's a great cause. Let me flip this camera here and my infinite buttons.
Yeah, mutual aid, because if we don't help each other, nobody is.
That's it. So solidarity is key, unity is key, and that's how we achieve great things. So as you all know, I'm local, independent, and nonprofit. So the only way that you can help me out is by helping the algorithm spread this out. That means liking, commenting, sharing. Send this out. Send this to all your union brothers and sisters and everybody else. And this is the last video I have for the last 2 days. So a lot of content out there for you all to check out after this if you haven't already. And some more things in the works. So just look out for that. But until next time, you all, remember, always think critically.